I think we have the carnival barker himself, the head of the hot dog eating contest on July 4th.
Yeah, I hear he's very shy, so we'll have to coax him out of his shell. Rich Shea, thanks for coming on this morning.
Hey guys, how are you?
Good. So we've been trying to describe for listeners, how this thing has grown into the Super Bowl of eating that it is, and how it started. And we basically have gotten so far as to say that you and your brother started repping them years ago, and kind of came up with this as a publicity event, and it just grew from there, right?
Sadly, we can't take the credit for that. There's two things. There's two people involved well before us. So Nathan Handwerker himself, there's legend that Nathan started this 101 years ago with just a few immigrants trying to prove who was the most patriotic. And his claim, as the story has it, was whomever can eat the most of my hot dogs at noon on July 4 is the most patriotic, and an Irish immigrant named Jim Mullen, it said, won. Then there was a press agent, classic press agent in New York City, Max Rosie, who's no longer with us. Worked for with another great press agent, Morty Matz, former boss of mine and George's. And Max Rosie was legendary in that he would marry people on water skis and do things like that. And he really fell in love with the concept of the hot dog eating contest and sort of carried the torch for years. And then George, my brother, while working with them, kind of took it over and saw the charm. And then we joined forces in the late 90s and started the league, and Nathan's has been our biggest sponsor since.
So the league it's called the International Federation of Competitive Eating. That's a mouthful.
It is. We called it the IFOCE. It's still sort of the business arm of it. So and so few people leave the O in for of in an acronym. But so we called it the IFOCE, and in about 2002 we changed it to Major League Eating, which is how most people know it today. Really, only the purists call it the IFOCE anymore.
Yeah, the purists. All right. So yeah, I mean, Major League Eating, it's a little more of a manageable, chunk to bite off. But so I mean,
more palatable.
Yeah, it's more palatable. It's more of appetizer size, you'd say. And these days, that you get a plate in the restaurant, and the food is like right in the middle of the plate. So maybe that's what we're moving towards. But on the other hand, the contest got bigger and bigger, right? And I'm sure a part of it was because of the marketing and the way it was handled. I know the nicknames, they're great nicknames. They're a great introduction and backstories to a lot of these eaters. So, like, who was behind that? You or George? I mean, did you both kind of come up with a lot of these, the narrative to a lot to these eaters and to really flesh them out in context?
We celebrate the pageantry of Coney Island and always have. If you think of Max, I mentioned Max Rosie, so that he would go out there, and there might be a return competitor, a guy from Canarsie who did it the year before, but there were no, fixtures in our sport, no celebs, no stars. And then, in the late 90s, we started having return competitors, Mike DeVito, a great New Yorker who was the first to regularly eat 20 Nathan's hot dogs and buns in competition. Actually brought the belt back, restored honor to Coney Island, beat a lady named Oreo Ito in an off-season contest under the Brooklyn Bridge, no joke, and brought the mustard yellow belt, which had been lost in Japan, back to the U.S. Then Ed Crotchy, a great guy from Canarsie, who was sort of our first American boisterous repeat champion. But when Max started, it was maybe you get the Daily News out there, maybe the Times would send a camera, maybe you get a local TV affiliate, but it was not a must cover. And one thing that we did do is as the sport got more and more popular, and we built the legend out there. Then CNN started covering, and Corey, I know you've been alert to this a long time, and I can't imagine. I want to apologize for however many news tips we've sent you over the years. But it became big, and now it's kind of must cover, and the press gets there early. Because there's sharp elbows in the press booth, and we've been very lucky with just repeat perennial coverage has kind of become part of the fabric of the 4th of July.
Right. Listen, I'm sure free hot dogs for the press is probably part of the appeal.
Yeah, Richie, just two questions. You do have a very famous last name. I mean, any Met fan out there would know Shea Stadium. Are you any relation?
No, but I'll tell you, ever since I was a kid in school, and obviously every time I do any transaction in New York City, even to this day, that people ask me about Shea Stadium, or I used to say, if you rather than spell it for him, I just say like the stadium. But Bill Shea, I understand, was one of the most beloved guys. I knew a lady here in the city, Claudia Wagner, who's a sort of a political consultant, and she worked for him when she was a young attorney, and she spoke so highly of him. And everyone I've spoken to, whoever crossed paths with Bill Shea, not just Met fans, but like whoever actually worked with him said he was like one of the most lovely guys in the world. So it's no relation, but I'm proud to share the same last name.
All right, now Richie, let's get into the technical aspects. Who provides the hot dogs?
Stop messing around
here.
Come on.
I know. Enough of the personal stuff now. Who provides the hot dogs? How many are there? Have you ever run out? And how are the hot dogs cooked? Because everything probably has to be up to a same standard, that everyone has to get the same hot dog, the same bun. What is the quality control on all of this?
Well, it's a scandal if they're not Nathan's hot dogs. I'll say that right away.
That would be. Well, first of all, they are Nathan's. It's original. The original Nathan's hot dog on the original beach, right? It's the corner of Surf and Stillwell, where the contest has always been held. One thing, you talk about standards. When it comes to Major League eating, competitive eating, the 4th of July hot dog eating contest, we've never changed the game. In basketball, they truncated the three-point line. In the NFL, they made it easier for people to catch the ball, meaning more penalties for interference because they want the scores to go up. In baseball, they brought in the wall. We haven't changed a thing. It's always been the same exact Nathan's. Skinless dog. I'm sorry, natural casing dog out there in Coney Island. They are grilled. The dog bun combo is roughly 2 ounces. Everybody gets the same. They grill about 1,500 for the 2 competitions. There's a ladies' competition and the men's. Each have $20,000 prizes. So they grill the hot dogs just like you would get at any Nathan's. The same exact Nathan's bun. There are 5 hot dogs to a plate. Competitors can separate dog from bun. They can dunk dog and bun. They can't dunk for longer than 5 seconds because then you get some flotsam and jetsam in the cups, and it makes it hard for the judges.
No one should be able to dunk anything for more than 5 seconds. It's
exactly.
Just, and then your coffee turns
and they can break dog in half. So if you eat a fraction of a hot dog, the only rule is you have to eat the corresponding fraction of bun. And once they complete 5, they move on to the next plate. And for the first. We have a thing now that we call DPM. When Joey Chestnut eats so much, it's dogs per minute. And basically,
he's slipping into
jargon
now.
I did a call on ESPN, and we have a graphic, a DPM graphic. If he's up around 10 or 11 in the first few minutes, you're on record pace.
But Richard, when did this thing come in with the dunking? I seem to remember years ago that wasn't part of the tradition of dunking into this pint glass or whatever the water. Is it water? Is it regular water? Is it Poland Spring? Could it be beer if they wanted to? I mean, this seems to be a new technology. It's almost like the growth hormones that have infected football and baseball and stuff like that. When did this become part of the game?
Well, so dunking came in with Kazutoyo Arai, the second sort of well-known Japanese eater. It was continued then. Once he did it, everyone did it. And Kobayashi did it with great effect, winning 6 titles.
But was there ever a ruling on that? Who was he to come in from Japan and bring in this new technique?
And usher in the modern era.
I mean, yeah.
Well, they were always allowed water, and it's just we never had a rule against it. So I think our society is litigious enough. Why apply another rule on our Day of Independence? But if you talk about dunking, no beer, no alcohol, but they can bring seltzer. They can bring Eater X, who's a New York City resident, now retired, Tim Janis. He actually introduced what's called the alternative beverage movement about 10 years ago. And that is, he instead of just water, he brought lemonade, iced tea, something to sort of, adjust his palate or offset.
You're starting to introduce caffeine now, dear, during the competition. I'm getting a little bit scared because you're down that slippery slope. Right. First it was water. Now you're talking about a little bit of caffeine. Yeah. Where's it going to end?
Right. We're getting into wrestling with the human metabolism.
We have not instituted drug testing in our sport. I mean, I think if a large pharmaceutical or drug testing company, for instance, wanted to sponsor us, we would consider it. But right now, we think
you should introduce psych testing.
Psych testing, I don't think we want to go there. We want to keep the game alive.
By the way, do you think a lot of these eaters train on Nathan's, or does it really matter? I mean, do they want to get that? For the real?
Joey, we discourage any training away from the table. One thing that's good for us, and it's funny, you talk about guys, you hear the term mid-season form. Our
definitely do.
Eating, Nathan's is our biggest event, but we do events all around the world, and it kind of starts in late winter. And then, down south we're at a lot of festivals with Acme Oyster House or wherever it might be. So the competitors, as they approach the stage on July 4, they're the top-ranked men and women in the game, and they've had a number of contests, under their belt, let's say, for 2017.
Right. It's like it's like the marathon or the U.S. Open. I mean, it just peaks with July 4th at Coney, right?
But now I see another problem here now.
Dogs per minute.
You see the problem that we had with college rankings throughout the country in football. Who qualifies for Coney Island? And does it is there a percentage of Americans, or can people from around the world come in? Who qualifies and who makes this judgment? Because you see the problem we have with college football. Number one ranking.
Well, unlike the BCS, we're a merit-based system. So there are this year there's typically between 13 and 20 qualifiers domestically. We had 19 in the U.S. this year. So Joey Chestnut holds the mustard yellow belt. So just like the Masters, he doesn't have to qualify. Now, other people, whether they're great eaters or unknown, do have to go to one of these qualifiers. They can go to as many as 3. And so as we tour the nation, the champion from each qualifier, whether it's at the Poconos Raceway or down in Tampa at a summer festival, wherever the qualifier might have been, whomever won that qualifier, male and female, they stamp their ticket to Coney Island.
Do you bring them in, or do they have to pay their own way to get up here?
So that's one of the charms. They get an all-expense-paid trip in a hotel here in Midtown, and it's a heck of a.
And can they go to Nathan's and practice for free, say during the week when they're in training, or
No, I don't think they get unlimited food, but they get treated very well by Nathan's, and obviously, and
those
also
people you don't want to open up an
all-you-can-eat. The mayor can welcome them, and they get treated well.
I mean, I don't think you'd come out on the better end if you're opening up an all-you-can-eat situation for the people like
Not
this.
with these guys, no.
Right? You should get like some kind. You should groom. I mean, you don't want to fix this kind of thing, but I mean, you should groom some kind of like New York hot dog, like a dirty water dog vendor. All year long, he's he's eating his own profits, and practicing.
Well, there was talk of Joey Chestnut, who has won 9 belts, but you'll remember in 2015 he lost to a guy named Matt Stoney, and he was really, crestfallen after that. And he was considering. He lives in San Jose. He was considering moving into the actual Nathan's Famous to train, kind of like Rocky. I mean, go to the actual place to live in the elements and to breathe in that great Nathan's Famous smell all day long for months as he approaches the contest.
Yeah, and what happened?
He didn't do that due to code violation.
Due to a sudden bout of sanity.
Potential code problems.
Richie, you keep throwing names out there. I know we're very familiar with what's going on, these legends down at Coney Island. But about 10 times you've thrown out the name Joey Chestnuts. Now, a lot of our audience might not know. I mean, us in the know, we know who Joey Chestnuts is.
Right.
But who is Joey
Chestnut? He wrote
Chestnut?
that Christmas song, right?
Joey Chestnut is, he's a ranch hand Romeo. He's from Vallejo, California. Now he lives in San Jose. And he's, I met him in 2000 and I'd say 4. And he was an Aw Shucks 2003. He was just an Aw Shucks kid who had a certain ability. He was a rookie out of the asparagus circuit. And I didn't even know his name. And then I met him, and he started at his first Nathan's contest. He placed 3rd, eating north of 30 hot dogs. I think 35. I remember our booth was positioned right in front of his side of the stage, and I ended up gassing on a lot about Joey just because I'm a fan of the sport, student of the game. And he's the guy who. Kobayashi was a legend. He won 6 straight titles. He's the first guy who to break the 50 hot dog mark. So Joey was sort of America's hope, an American hero, if you will. And he was the one to take down Kobayashi and beat him multiple years. And actually now is looking at his 10th. So he's going for his 10th mustard yellow belt, which will put him in rarefied company in the world of sports. Like Nadal just got his 10th French Open.
Yeah, but how many hot dogs can he eat? What's his DPM?
Come on, we're not gonna.
I don't know what Nadal's DPM is, but I think if he focused, he could get in a respectable spot. But there's no one like Joey. And then we shouldn't discount the women. Mickey Sudo from Las Vegas,
who's our next guest.
Yeah, we're going to speak to her after you. Yeah,
Sonia Thomas, still active out of Alexandria, Virginia. Longtime ladies top runner, and she's eaten 45 Nathan's hot dogs and buns in 10 minutes.
And how is your overseas coverage affected? I know with the Yankees, they would like to sign someone from Japan, and then next thing you know, the Japanese television are covering the events when they get a pitcher or a hitter coming in from Japan. How is the overseas coverage, and do you encourage people from overseas to come that would help with the ratings overseas?
You know, we are very fortunate just in far as, if you think about coverage, our event is broadcast on ESPN just here in the U.S., and we are, I think, the highest rated show of the day, meaning we get better numbers than baseball. But the way I measure it is more just like earned media or just press impacts, like consumer impressions, and we do get impressions all around the world. This year, we don't have a big foreign competitor. We have in the past, and we always welcome. We've had German bratwurst eaters and a haggis eater from Scotland, and we have a lady from New Zealand this year. But beyond that, we don't have a big international presence, but we're always welcoming international eaters.
The croque monsieur champion of Paris.
And Nathan's itself is sold in dozens of countries around the world.
Yeah. And Rich, what are some of the better nicknames, if you do have to say so yourself?
These guys, for the most part, make them up themselves.
Really have their own. Okay.
I like this guy, the very intriguing eater. He's 6'9". His name is Gideon Oji. He's Nigerian, but he lives in America now. And just to watch him at the table is amazing because he's so tall. And in fact, it's sort of a hindrance because he has to lean down much further to get to the plate of hot dogs. But his nickname is The Truth, and I enjoy that one. Yeah. Sonia calls herself and always has the Black Widow. Joey is Jaws. I like Eater X quite a bit. Crazy Legs Conti, Badlands, Booker. The list goes on. There was a kid for a while named, I forget his last name, but his first name was Kevin. He was not a big eater, but he made the 4th of July. And he liked to dress up in tuxedo, and he called himself 00 Kevin.
Well, that brings me to another thing. We talked about who supplies the hot dogs and the qualification, what type of water or caffeine you can use. What is the uniform? Is there any uniform for being on the stage? Can you advertise anything you want, like wear a T-shirt for a website or anything like that? What is the standard for the uniform?
No, so yeah, they have to wear the required uniform, which for years has always just been a Nathan's T-shirt. It's Coney Island. We don't want to put on too many airs.
Right.
So
with
it's
very
nice
expandable cotton weave.
Yeah, now it's like a wicking fabric because it does get hot out there. But it's a nice Nathan's T-shirt, and it may have this year. It'll have the Coney Island Brewery branding because Coney Island Brewing is a sponsor. But they don't wear other brands on the stage. It's all about Nathan's and Coney Island Brewing this year.
Yeah. So, Rich, why don't you just give the essentials as far as how people can tune in or even come down? I mean, we have a lot of New Yorkers. I mean, just what is?
Yeah, definitely.
It's noon on Tuesday, right? 4th of July.
It's noon on July 4th. It's always been high noon on July 4th. Corner of Surf and Stillwell. The subway lets out right there. It's going to be a great day this year, weather-wise. It is a bucket list thing, not only for New Yorkers and Americans, but we get fans from all around the world who want to check it off, just like running with the Bulls or going to Mardi Gras. And then we get return fans every year. So I would suggest going. It's a once-in-a-lifetime sort of experience. Corner of Surf and Stillwell, it's the epicenter of patriotism, America's original beach and America's original hot dog. But if you can't make it for whatever reason, let's say you're in jail, you could watch it on ESPN.
Right.
Well, you know what? What you could do for us now, maybe you're listening to WBAI, and we're talking about a major event in New York City on July 4th. Is the hot dog eating contest at Nathan's. But we have someone on the line, Mika Soto, yeah. Soto. Richie, maybe you can introduce her to our audience. She's on the line with you.
So Mickey Soto is the top-ranked female eater in the world. Out of Las Vegas, Nevada, 2-time, I believe, Mickey, forgive me, maybe 3-time pink Nathan's Famous belt holder.
3 times.
She holds many titles, and she's a fantastic competitor and ambassador for our sport.
Yeah, Mickey, thanks for coming on. So you're going to be there on Tuesday, and I guess this would make you – I mean, you won last year. You're probably the top seed going into this, right?
I would guess so. I actually won 2014, 15, and 16, so okay. I'm actually going for my fourth win in a row, and I'm really excited to be competing again this year.
Right. Are you in good shape? Have you been working out, training?
Yeah. practice started kind of late, but preparation never stopped, and I'm definitely prepared to go in on the 4th and rock it.
Well, how do you train for an event like this?
Ideally, I would have grabbed a sparring partner and lined up 10 minutes worth of hot dogs and gone about it that way. But I think this year I just focused more on, keeping my energy levels up. I've been spending a lot more time in the gym, doing cardio, just keeping my energy levels up. I did a couple time trials with hot dogs. I just cooked up 30 to see how fast I could eat those. But nothing that would kind of give me an idea as to how many I'm capable of eating on the 4th. But every year I'd like to do just a little bit better than the year before. And of course it'd be nice to break that magic threshold of 45, which is the women's record currently.
Right. And your personal best is 38.5, right?
On the 4th, at the finals, yes. On stage I've done 40 in a qualifier back when I had to qualify for the 4th.
Right. Now, is it you keep getting better, or are there some days you can eat more? I mean, are you getting up there like not really knowing exactly how well you can do, or what? Like in other words, there some kind of is it an open-ended equation type of thing, or what?
Well, I know what I'm capable of, right? I've mimicked Nathan's conditions to the best of my ability and done 45 at home. It doesn't necessarily translate to that sort of a performance the day of. Just because you've got nerves, you can't control the weather. The hot dogs are prepared, not somewhat in advance, but, with enough time to allow for introductions and whatnot. So, there are all these variables that make it a little bit difficult. But, with that said, we're all competing with the same product, and, I can only attribute my performance to external facters.
Yeah, but you said you mimic the conditions. So you go to that place in Las Vegas where they have a fake Nathan's and a fake, Coney Island. That's where you go to work out, like to really get the feel of it.
No, just because of the quantity, it makes more sense to get the product from Nathan's itself and prepare them, at home. So, but yeah, you try eating hot dogs for 10 minutes straight in the Las Vegas, sun. It's definitely not the easiest thing.
Right. Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, no, I just wanted to know, what is your technique? We were speaking with Richie Shane, we have him on the phone, about this new phenomenon that was brought in not all that long ago, the dunking, and using what type of water. Now caffeine has been introduced. But what is your technique, and what type of dunking do you do?
Yeah, so I just I observed the greats when it comes to Nathan's, mostly through YouTube. And I copied what they were doing. Mainly you grab 2 of the hot dog meats at once, and while you're eating those, and I eat those side by side. So I'm actually eating 2 hot dogs at once, minimizing my chewing, just swallowing large pieces. And while I'm doing that, I'm taking the bun and dunking that in some warm liquid. In my case, I use Crystal Light, usually strawberry, orange, banana flavor, something like that.
You don't want to give away too many secrets here, but I appreciate it.
I know, I trade secrets. No, it works for me. It just helps alter the taste somewhat so that you don't run into flavor fatigue and get tired of the taste of hot dogs really too early in the game. So I did that, and then I just kind of tweaked it to what works for me personally. So I observed their techniques and made it my own, basically. And a lot of people give me a hard time for this, but I tend to turn my head to the right when I eat. For me, I've just found that it helps me swallow faster. I don't know if it opens up some sort of passageway, but I definitely have my own little signature moves when it comes to eating hot dogs.
All right, 2 questions. Mika, why is it that, what's the advantage of dunking? And then, Richard, after that, are there any of the contestants that just go old school and they won't dunk it, that they'll have to eat it just straight away?
I think in order to be competitive, in order to get down the numbers that you're physically capable of consuming, you have to dunk. Otherwise, you're
living in the past.
Time would limit. Yeah, it would just limit the amount that you could eat. You wouldn't run out of capacity. You would just run out of the 10-minute allotted time. So I think anybody who considers themselves a serious competitor, whether they like it or not, has to dunk.
Let me ask Rich for 1 second. I don't know. This question almost begs to be asked. I feel like an idiot. I don't know this. I mean, do they have to keep it down essentially to win? I mean, or what? I mean, I'm not talking about like after the contest.
And Mickey would probably echo this. We do dozens of contests. It's very rare to see somebody suffer a reversal of fortune or an urge contrary to swallowing. So if they did, that would be automatic disqualification because we wouldn't want them to start eating again. That would be deemed unsafe. But you don't really see it. It's very rare to see it. But the rule is within the framework of the competition. So let's say, from the starting whistle to the presentation of the trophies, that would be the area. But even then, you look at Mickey, gosh, you talk about heat and pressure and crowd and all that. Has to do interviews and go on ESPN after her performance. Joey does, 40 plus minutes of interviews on the stage. So it's not common at this level to see it.
Yeah. All right. So, Rich, we'll just plug this thing again. I mean, so people, people who just tuning in know where to go, know what they're in store for, and that type of thing.
Absolutely. So you'll see the ladies contest recapped in our live hour on ESPN. The contest itself is at noon. The ladies, I think, it is 11:30. Mickey on ESPN3.
I think I saw that it was 11, but I'm not sure.
11. Okay. So we start broadcasting digitally around 10:30 on ESPN's mobile platform, ESPN3. So if you're at the beach or you're waiting in an airport or in a car, you can watch it there. And then if you want to go in person, obviously get there early on July 4, corner of Surf and Stillwell Avenues, the original Nathan's Famous in Coney Island, and you can take the subway right there.
Right, I can attest to getting there early.
And Mika, what's your training schedule? Will you be coming in early to train a little bit in New York, get climatized, get the atmosphere and things like that, or do you just come in on the day or the day before?
Shop her in.
Oh, if you mean come in early to climatize, if by that you mean shop and, explore New York, then absolutely. Yeah. I'm actually flying out tomorrow morning, and I'll be in New York by Thursday night.
Now, will you, essentially starve yourself, or that doesn't work? I mean, that's not really what you do, right?
No, I mean, I definitely fast somewhat. I don't want to be full in any way. But you also have to keep your energy levels up. I can't go in, about to faint because I've been starving for the last 2 days. I will say that iced Americanos are my best friend in the days leading up to Nathan's. You need that caffeine, that energy level. But I do, lightly snack throughout the day. No huge meals, though.
Right. Okay. Mickey Sudo going for her 4th belt. Mustard belt. Is that the women's title as well?
It's a pink belt, actually. Pink belt. But it's just as coveted, and the prize purse is the same for the ladies and men. It's $20,000 each round.
Wow, that's a lot of hot dogs. Yeah. Of course, Mickey will go back to Las Vegas and then put that on, on the roulette wheel, and then just,
Right.
I know. All on lucky number 7. No, not at all.
Richie, we've had a guest on here, Gersh Kutzman. Yeah. How was his coverage? Because I remember him. He took it so seriously, and I just remember his early coverage of the hot dog eating contest.
Yeah, Gabe Pressman followed City Hall the way Gersh follows Coney.
Right. Gabe patterned himself after Gersh's hot dog coverage.
Oh, is that how it went?
Gersh has a pork-filled Pulitzer for this thing, man. It's just like ballpark. He's certainly been one of the most consistent followers and sort of fans of the sport, but also a journalist, and sometimes given to hyperbole. Yeah, the line between journalist and buff is very thin in Gersh's case.
I've never heard the term buff and Gersh applied at the same time.
Okay, well, Rich, Mickey, good luck, Mickey, on Tuesday, and Rich, I don't have to. Good luck. I mean, you. This thing is like right up. You were born to do this, my man.
Okay, but before you go, Mika,
your attention to the sport, and I hope you can make it, or at least give it a watch, and have a great holiday.
Yeah, Mika, you're out in Las Vegas. Can you bet on yourself before you come to New York? Is there gambling on this?
Is there a line on this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I before I participated, I did see that there were lines up at the casinos. But they don't go up until I want to say the morning of. So I actually haven't been here, but from what I understand, that's still a thing. And I guess, but I think it was like I had to bet 500 to win 100 on myself. It was
you were the odds-on favorite. Yeah, it's like
it would have made no sense for me to bet on myself.
Well, you know what? Now I see the mob getting involved, putting pressure on some of the eaters. You're going to eat less hot dogs this contest. I got a lot of money.
The back alleys. Yeah. The back alleys of Brighton Beach.
Yeah, I think they've gotten to Rich. He's stacked the deck. All right. Well, tune in Tuesday at Nathan's on Coney Island for the hot dog eating contest. Noon on 11, right? Tell me again.
Well, the
11 on ESPN3, which is the digital platform, and then noon on ESPN, and there'll be re-airs throughout the day. But I would encourage your listeners in this area to get over there.
Person.
You're going to get out in time to grab a Nathan's for your own and get home for the fireworks.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Rich, Mickey, thanks a lot, and appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, guys.
Now, we're going to stay out at Coney Island, and this is definitely, you're not going to do the two together. You could never do the July 4th thing and then say, you know what, I'm just going to head up the street and go to the Cyclone.
You want to go to the Cyclone first, I think.
Oh, God. Could you imagine just going down to the Cyclone? But who's our next guest, and how did you get involved with Richie Rodriguez?
Rich Rodriguez. Well, Tess O'Brien, who works for the Shays PR firm, brought it to my attention that, the Cyclone was having its 90th anniversary. It actually happened on Monday. And, of course, the Cyclone, everyone knows, the venerable, iconic roller coaster down at Coney Island. And it turned 90 years old on Monday. And we were discussing how to do some kind of story about it. And it was mentioned that there was a photographer years ago who used to take those automatic pictures of riders on the Cyclone, and then Tess mentioned, there's a picture of this guy who set this record. I think she actually put me onto the photographer who said, it even got this guy Richie Rodriguez who set the record, and I'm like, what record? I said, record in 1977 for the longest ride on a subway. And it was like whatever it was.
Oh, the Cyclone.
On the Cyclone, on the subway. Right. I think that record's being set these days. I mean, just in a commute. But, and so Richie in 1977 set a record for more than 4 days continuously riding the Cyclone roller coaster. And Richie's on with us now. Thanks for coming on, Rich Rodriguez.
Hey, great to be on Talkback Radio. It's a pleasure.
It's great to have you on. We're just segueing now from the hot dog eating contest to to another extreme feat. Like you started out riding roller coasters basically in '77 when you set this record, and that kind of sparked the whole side career for you. I mean, it should be said that you went on to study at Columbia, and you became a teacher, and but because you did this as a 19-year-old in Coney Island, this made headlines, and kind of amusement parks from around the country and around the world started asking you and flying you out to them to do more records as promotions for the park, and. But Richie, take us back as you did with me that day last Friday when we rode the Cyclone. Right. What you were a teenager growing up first in Brooklyn, and then you moved to Staten Island in your high school years, and your parents used to take you to Luna Park and to what was Astroland at the time.
Astroland Park, yeah.
Right, and you to ride the Cyclone, and your father used to want you to ride it, and at first you were as a kid you were too scared to ride it and take it. And why don't you just tell us the backstory?
Yeah. First of all, Corey, it's great to be back on talking with you again, because I remember it was just last week, I think, that we were riding around on the Cyclone and reminiscing. So it's nice to talk to you so soon afterward.
And that story appeared in the Times on Saturday. I'm Rich Rodriguez in the New York Times riding the Cyclone.
You did a nice story for the Times, right? That was great. I grew up, as you I grew up in originally from Borough Park, and then I lived in Bay Ridge, and I was about 8, 9, 10 growing up in Bay Ridge, and my parents, if I was a good boy, and I usually tried to be, they would take me to Astroland Park to ride the smaller rides, So, I basically ride the kiddie rides at the steeplechase in Astroland Park, but they had at the time 3 big, really, let's say, adult roller coasters. They had the Tornado, they had the Thunderbolt, and then the most kind of frightening of all, the Coney Island Cyclone. Now, my dad said, Rich, would you like to try to ride those? Or let's say the Cyclone. I said, well, Dad, no. I was terrified in terms of just the way they looked. And but I said, Pop, one of these days I'm going to ride the Cyclone. I'm going to do that. But so, I'm 8, 9, life goes on. And then I end up going to Susan Wagner High School, and we had a senior class trip this is 1975 in the right at the beginning of summer, our senior class trip. We went on the trip, and I remember we were going to go on the Cyclone, and there were, I had never ridden it, because remember, I'm a little boy saying I'm afraid of it, but one day. So there were a couple girls I liked in the class, and one of them wanted to go on, but she didn't have someone to ride with. So I said, hey, I'll ride with you, no problem. Of course, she didn't know that I'd never ridden it, but I didn't, I wanted to go on with her, and show her that I was maybe a big shot or something. But so I went on the Cyclone with her, and you know, we both liked it. And I said to myself, wow, I can do this. You know, wow, I'm hooked. And so that summer, as I remember telling you for the New York Times story, you know, that's how I graduated from Susan Wagner. And then in the summer, I heard about this world record set by Michael Boodley that summer on the Coney Island Cyclone. It was like 1,001 rides, 45 hours. And so that stuck in my mind. I said, wow, there's someone who's kind of a pro. Wow, I'm going to think about maybe, I don't know, doing that someday or doing what he did. So that started. Now, just to jump to the record, you know, in 1977, I moved back to Brooklyn. I was living with my grandparents, and that was the summer of the 50th anniversary of the Cyclone. And so there's a lot of celebrations that summer for the Cyclone. And it was also the 50th anniversary of Charles Lindbergh, who I remember mentioning was my aviation hero, one of my great heroes. So he had ridden the Cyclone and said it was more thrilling than riding in an flying in an airplane. So I said, I'm going to do a tribute to Lindbergh, and I'm going to try to break Boodley's record. So I called up Coney Island. I spoke to Jerry Mendito, the great ride operations manager at that time, and he said, talk to Milton Berger, our director of public relations, and I did. And so after we spoke for about an hour, he said, okay, kid, can you start August 18th? And that's how it began. Right. And, of course, I went 103 hours, 55 minutes. I set a new world record, which was a difficult one. And, you know, I talked to you about the minutiae of the record, which I'd happy to go into more. But after I did that record, I started getting calls from other parks, letters from other parks. Would you like to come to our park and do what you did at Coney Island? So that's all the backstory, kind of, of how it started.
Right. But let me just back up for a second. I mean, we just glossed over, you know, a 19-year-old kid deciding, like, you probably rode roller coasters a few times in your life, to deciding I'm going to do, you know, whatever it takes to break the record. And it turned out to be 4.5 days almost, you know, nonstop, day and night. Okay, bathroom breaks. But you know, rain, you know, overnight, everyone goes home. They keep two attendants there running the roller coaster. This is crazy, man. Like, you know.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, you know, so where did you get it in your head? And, well, let's put it this way. When you went up to this promoter who handled the Cyclone for publicity, he probably saw, oh, this kid, okay, here's this summer's promotion. We're going to have the kid, you know, we're going to get all the press down. And that's what happened, right? You trained a bit. I mean, you were telling me the creative ways that you trained without going on the, I mean, they allowed you short times on the Cyclone, comparatively short. But you had your friend drive you around, you sticking your head out the car window, you were riding the subway overnight, you're doing all these kind of like wildly creative, yet nutty kind of like training methods.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, the interesting thing, just as a little preface before that, you know, when I wanted to do the record, when I got it in my head during that summer, that, hey, this is the summer to do this. This is my brainstorm idea. I'm going to try to, you know, the tribute to Lindbergh, break Boodley's record, do something on the Cyclone now that I know that I can ride it. See, the interesting thing is in 1975, if you wanted to do a running marathon, I think I mentioned this during the story you did, if you wanted to do a running marathon, if you wanted to do a cycling marathon, you know, if you wanted tips, if you wanted training advice, you could probably go to somebody in your neighborhood, or maybe the guy or woman next door, or, you know, about like what's, you know, good technique for running and for distance and for like pacing yourself and blah, 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 and this and that. Right. Plenty of people, plenty of running clubs. But if you wanted to do a world record on a roller coaster, who in God's name are you going to talk to? Who in the world? Nobody. I mean, I had, you know, so I finally...
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Right. It wasn't a thing back then. You established it. Well, Boodley, you know, but you took it to another level, and then you took it to even further levels in the next number of years. Now talk about your current record and how you got to that. You know, how long you could spend. You know, more than a month.
Yeah. Well, no, and then the current record is I went on. I mean, I did this over 30 years. In 2007, I broke the world record on the the Blackpool Pleasure Beach Big Dipper, and that's a long story too, how I got there. But they had heard about my record in the U.S., etc. And you know what it was is that if I could just back up for the Cyclone for a second, you know, doing that record, like Jerry Mendito said, that was like grabbing the bull by the horns, you know, because that was a tough ride. And you know, I did that record, and I did a few others afterwards because Parks called me up, and then you know, I kind of retired during the 1980s, and then but Blackpool Pleasure Beach had heard about me, and they invited me over to try the record there. And so, it was just that once I had done the marathon, I knew that I could do it elsewhere. I knew I had it in me to do it. And over in the United Kingdom, they were excited by this. It was something new, very novel. So I did that. But Blackpool is you have to be an open-minded director of a park today to let someone do the record, and particularly in the wake of 9/11 after the terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center. Like, parks are very skittish about just things that are subject to maybe someone will see this and want to do something bad, or it got to be very, very difficult to do another record in the United States after 9/11. Because I went back on the circuit back in the late 90s.
Yeah.
And the park overseas, Blackpool Pleasure Beach, was open-minded. They were the one park that would say, yeah, Rich, you can come back over here and break the world record. We'd love to have you. So that kind of began my connectedness to Blackpool Pleasure Beach, where I hold the current Guinness World Record of, like I say, 405. That's about 17 days.
17 days. And just so people know, again, this is nonstop. This is eating. This is eating. This is sleeping on the roller coaster. I mean, some people can't go on these things once. This is living on the thing, right? So just talk about what it's like to spend that much time, to sleep, to eat, and all these things.
Yeah, sure. Well, going back to to answer that question, go back to the Cyclone. Remember in 1977, I'm just saying, how do you prepare for this? When I went on, the toughest thing about it was I knew I could ride. I knew I was in good shape, but could I sleep on a roller coaster? That's the thing. Can the human body sleep? And I learned to sleep. I learned that the body really does acclimate itself, and that it becomes used to the constant motion. So once I did the first night and slept on it, I knew I could do more nights. So that was the big question mark. So now, jumping gears forward, I know I could sleep on the coaster, but the thing, the toughest thing about doing a marathon is the first 24 to 36 hours where your body's making this adjustment. So after 3 or 4 days, for me, it was more normal to be on the ride than off the ride. So people would say, wow, after a couple of days, it must be really hard. But actually, no, for me, it gets easier. But, and I learned how to pad the car out, put a lot of foam padding in the car. You learn how to balance and situate yourself in the car seat, learn how to move with the turns and all this stuff. And after about 6, 7 days, then you're dealing with the exposure. So the swelling, your skin tissue swells up from all the wind pressure. Doesn't matter how hot or cold it is. And, things like that, the rain and the heat, you have to deal with it. It's like being in an open boat in the middle of the Atlantic.
And lots of junk food.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Can you really eat? Isn't it better not to eat anything, right? Well, I threw that theory out the window, because the worst thing for me to do is to ride on an empty stomach. I like to feel satiated, so I like to have some good park junk food. That's right. As you know, at Coney Island.
And Richard, the difference between now the roller coasters from 1977 to today, I mean, Coney Island is known for the Cyclone as a wooden roller coaster, and I've taken it, my kids have taken it, and the thing about it is, it just knocks you back and forth. You could come off there with bruises, whereas the roller coasters today, they're like the space shuttle. You get in, and things are coming over the top of you, and they're coming into the side of you. Now, do you get to pick which car you go on? Which is the better car? The front car, because I know you're not throwing your arms up to get that picture because you're there for the long haul, or is the back car because it seems to lift off at that, or are you in the middle? What is the car?
That's a very good observation, honestly, and that's the first thing that Michael Boodley's father told me. He said, ride in the middle. Jerry Mendito of the Cyclone said, ride in the middle car. The middle car is the best for doing a marathon because you're riding thousands and thousands of times, and it's the most balanced ride. Now, you're quite right in saying that, in saying that the Coney Island Cyclone's a rickety ride. It bounces you around. Now, when I did the marathon in 77, it was a rougher ride. And over the years since then, it was people considered it would write on the, like on the internet later on, that it's the most, scary, dangerous ride in the world because it just knocks the heck out of you. And, it's rough. Now, if you ride in the back seat, you can come off with blisters with bruises on your legs because it whips you up in the air, like you say. And but people who ride once or twice want to be in the front. They want to be in the back because it's a hoop, to do it once or twice. But try doing that 1,000 times, right? So now the Coney Island Cyclone. Just a last remark on that. Yes, it's a rickety ride, and that's when they have the things like you say, space age roller coasters. They're like tubular steel. They're all smoother, and you're handcuffed in them, with shoulder harnesses and this and that. So in my opinion, I like modern space age rides, but the more you have coasters, inverted, suspended, like the Superman ride, it's swirling around in its feet and it's doing this. The more it takes you away from the classic sit-down Woody, like the Coney Island Cyclone. And the wooden ones are I have a romantic kind of like connection to that kind of ride. So that's my favorite, So you're quite right in that. But so that's why I say the Coney Island Cyclone may not be the biggest. There are coasters today called giga coasters and hyper coasters and mega coasters. The 400. There's going to be one 517 feet high this October in Orlando. But again, the Coney Island Cyclone's like 90 feet or thereabouts, and it still gives you the greatest ride in the world, a great first drop. It's got a great legacy, a great history of people who rode it. And here's the last point: it's an open coaster to the public, so you don't have to get. It's not like this corporatized world of theme parks. And I love Disney and Universal Studios, but the Coney Island Cyclone is open to the public. It's free. You just walk in if you want and take a ride. You don't have to go through one system and blah, 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 like you do at, a big, global, corporate theme park.
Right.
So that's my love of it.
Yeah. Yeah, right. You're walking down the street 1 minute, you decide to go on, and in 5 minutes you're riding. It's very immediate. Right.
That's right.
Now,
that's
just to go back
to
77, and not to put too fine a point on the way I kind of was wondering about the father thing. There wasn't one of these, not to get Freudian, but it wasn't one of these things you had to prove to your father that you could finally ride the Cyclone, right? And you did it in the biggest of ways. You set a world record doing it. Is there any truth to that, or is it really just
I remember telling you, Corey, in the nice article you did when we were riding on the phone in the days before about how my dad and my dad was a great, I will say great minor league baseball player. He's great at ball. He knew all about baseball, but I wasn't a good player. So we never had the big father-son catches or the connectedness of, father-son in baseball that many families have that I think is great, But one thing, my father also liked amusement parks, and he liked, Coney Island, and he grew up in Brooklyn himself, so he would take me there. So while I wasn't a great ball player, but, he thought, Rich, can you ride these big rides? And, of course, when I was 7 and 8, I wouldn't touch him. But I said, Pop, I'm going to do that one of these days, I promise, And so, but Coney Island and the thing it became my mom and dad, that was our connection. That was my childhood, my rite of passage with my dad, or rite of passage, whatever. And so, so I don't know how Freudian it is, but it was something I could say, hey, Pop, look, they say that it doesn't matter what you do in the world. If you're the best at something, that kind of distinguishes you. So I became kind of like the best, not in baseball, but certainly I think I became in the top 10 in the roller coaster world, in terms of riding. So
you say top 10. I mean, you're number one, right? You're number one right now, right? I mean,
well, thank you for saying that. Yes, I guess in the world record category, I'm number one.
You have the world record, right? Okay.
Yes, I do.
And just one other thing that this kind of caught my attention, that when you started describing, and it took a while for this is one of the last things we got into, because I kept on asking you about detail. How did you eat and all this, and then you got into telling me that how it actually went down on the ride, the first thing, people started seeing you because you got attention right away. The TV came down. Bill Mazer, the amazing Mazer on Channel 5 interviewed you. And people started coming down to this. Even your own, your whole senior class, whatever, your senior class came down. Teachers came down. Your parents, relatives, friends. Bikers were almost like hell, bikers were protecting you, and the Italian local Italian kids were looking out for you while they were they were running the ride. It just it's so Brooklyn. I feel like I'm in a Spike Lee movie of sorts, some kind of older school type of thing where, and it's your own. This is your life. It's almost like you're. Everyone in your life is and they're sitting and they're all taking rides with you. It must have been a trip where everyone in your life, suddenly you're this instant celebrity and you're on the news, you're making headlines, and everyone, the whole city's coming down and riding with you and everything. And
that was wonderful. Yeah. On that, I probably mentioned last week, when I'd never done this before, and Coney Island hadn't done anything this, kind of like a big record like this. They did do the record with Boodley, but for me, it was my first time, and I think the guy, Milton Berger, the promotion guy, and he believed in me, and that's why he organized and said he gave it the green light. But Jerry Mendito, God bless him, and he's the greatest of all time. But Jerry, I think, was skeptical because he let me do the training rides. But when I came down that day with my friend Mitch Ehrlich, my second or my help assistant on the Cyclone during the record, we believed in ourselves, but Jerry was, so when I got there, I tell you, it was like a ghost town. When I got there around 11 in the morning, might have been 10:30 in the morning on August 18th, 1977. I mean, Jerry was, they were expecting the marathon to begin, but I don't know if he believed I was going to show up. So there was no press there. Once I showed up and got on the station and started putting my blanket and pillows in the sidecar, I think he made a couple calls, and then the press, one by one, they started filtering in, and then we had a big platform of press. We had, the Daily News, and we had Bill Mazer, like you say, and press people, and they started saying, well, holy smokes, this kid's going to try this. So that was kind of something I remember. When I do the marathon, say at Blackpool, they have a whole parade, and they're driving me in a car, and, this and that, and it's all a big, kind of like scripted launch. But it was just like, well, let's see what happens if the kid shows up. So, but anyways, getting back to it, it was like a wonderful thing. Jerry Mendito, his cousin Johnny, who was a biker, and the crew itself, these 4 young Italian-American kids, probably younger than me, maybe about my age, but they were there, and they were all giving me the thumbs up, and they all got into it. And after the first night, when a lot of people would come down, you get some people who were wild, maybe some people being a little, drinking a little and this and that, and they all protected me, and they said, Rich, do you want to ride with someone? And of course they tried to, and they said, hey, Rich, we got a nice girl, pretty girl, says she wants to ride with you. They held my morale up, and, and they, what do you want to eat tonight, Rich? What can we do for you? And then, my class and Susan Wagner came down, some of my senior members of my graduating class, our valedictorian, George, came down, and, bunch of people. I had people come down to visit me who I hadn't seen since grade school. He said, "Remember me, Rich? We were in the 6th grade together in PS 35, and
That's so
and I said, oh yeah, So it was kind of like as the information disseminated, people started showing up from all, in the early part of my life, and all over. My grandparents, my mom and dad, my brother Gary, my sister Janet. And they all took rides with me, so it was kind of like a nice community thing, and I loved it,
Well, that's great, but then the nights came, right? And then, what was it like at night when you started, when these things got long and very trying and that kind of thing?
Yeah, and that's a good point, because it was a real party, a hoopla during the day, and, the kid showed up, we're going to do it, and they interviewed me, and it was all fun during the day, but then at night the park has to close eventually, it might have been 10 o'clock or, during the week. It might sometime around there, maybe a little bit later. But then people went home and it got dark, and you just had that cyclone light on the coaster lit up. And I was scared the first night. Like I told you, I freely admit it, because I didn't know if I was, all right, I know I can ride this thing, but can I sleep on the roller coaster? What's going to happen? What if I can't sleep in? What if I start to have some type of breakdown? But so I went there, and my friend Mitch was watching me and giving me blankets if I wanted, giving me stuff to drink, giving me hot coffee when the thing came into the station. But I was still worried, and he knew it. And I remember about 1 in the morning, I was still awake, sitting upright, and then I put a coat on, I put some pillows in. He said, kid, you need some more pillows in this thing and this and that. He said, look, tell me something, kid. How long are you going to last? Just tell me how long you want to do it. I said, well, Jerry, look, I think I feel okay, But he knew I was a little nervous. He said, all right. If you want to get off for a while, raise your hand. They'll stop it. No problem. Nothing to be embarrassed about. So I went on a few more hours. It got to be really late. And then I remember telling you how it was just cold and windy, and I just curled up, and I tried to just sort of think of other things. Think of the tough guy movies that I spoke about, with Steve McQueen and The Great Escape. I tried to think about, something that, I'm going to go on, because I told my classmates too that I'd do this. But so I woke up, it was 5 in the morning, and my friend Mitch, I woke up, I remember I passed out and I just woke up, and it was dawn, and Mitch came up to me and he shook me and said, hey, Rod, say hello to Thursday morning, buddy. And I remember he leaned over and he gave me a hug, and I knew I made it through the first night, and then the other team around me, the crew, the young Italian-American operators came over, and they say, hey, buddy, you did the first night, you're good. And then about 10 minutes later, Jerry Mendito came in. He said, hey, kid, you did the first night good. Now let's go. Get this thing going. We got a record to do. He kept that thing going because he knew there were press coming around. He wanted us to not, scrimp on anything. So, but the first night was scary because it was an unknown. I had never slept on a coaster. And, once I cracked that little barrier, I knew I could do this. I knew I had it. Then the thing was dealing with the rain the next night, how you're going to insulate yourself from being, soaked, and that was another difficulty. But
Richie, when you're doing this, what's the time frame when you come to the landing where people get on? How long a time frame do you wait there before the ride continues?
Sure.
And also during the day, were they taking on paying customers while you were doing it?
And that's let me take that last part first. If I had to do the marathon all by myself over 4 days, I mean, that would be really something that could drive you, off the wall. I mean, paying customers do come on. That's the beauty of it. Paying customers, see, according to the Guinness Book of World Record, it can stop in station like no more than 3 minutes or 2.5 minutes. Something they may have adjusted it, but because it has to stop for maintenance, practical. You can't run it straight through; it'll smash into the station platform. It'll rip up all the structure. But they can't let it stand more than 2.5 minutes. So during that time, they load passengers off and on. So people will ride, say, "Hey, Richie, we saw you on TV. You're doing a good job," and then they get off. I have to stay on all the way. Now, I say, so yeah, they're taking on paying customers, absolutely. But again, going back to the first part, yes, it stops in, whether it's at night or during the day, it stops in for a couple minutes. Sometimes at night, if I asked them to, I'd say, you can slow it and just slow it, creep it, and then just send it out. It was my call. But they couldn't let it go through the station too fast. That would damage the platform. But yeah, it's slowing down, obviously, right. And people sometimes say to me, they say, "Wow, were you doing this record by yourself? Wasn't it lonely?" And I would say, no, people are allowed to ride during the day. So I'm on that thing all the time. The only thing I'm allowed to do is I get a 5-minute break after every 60 minutes of riding. So after an hour, you get 5. So the idea was to build up 4 or 5 hours and take like a 25-minute break, a half hour, so you can get off, go to the restroom, eat something, change your clothes, wash your face. But they have very specific rules, and I noticed those rules for the first time in 1975 when I bought a Guinness book after Boodley did his record, and the Guinness book said Michael Boodley, and they said 45 hours, longest marathon on a roller coaster, Coney Island Cyclone. So I called up the Guinness book in London, England, and I asked them, could you send me the rules, a hard copy? And they did. There were specific rules. That's the first time I noticed them. So those are the ones that I followed ever since, basically.
Yeah. All right. Well, Rich, thanks for coming on, and it was a pleasure riding the Cyclone with you, with a pro.
Yeah.
And I got to say, I treasure the photo that they took, the automated photo, because we're going down the plunge, and I have my heart in my mouth, and I'm screaming, and I'm gripping the seat. I'm like a terrified animal. And in back of me in the car, and in the seat in back of me, Rich is leaning back with a big smile on his face, like he's on a picnic or something, and it just says it all. Man, it's like nothing for this guy.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great shot. I'm glad we took that. I'm glad we got that. And but to be honest, when I did my very first ride, when I was at Susan Wagner, maybe the girl next to me didn't see it, but I had my mouth wide open. I was screaming too. I was in fear. But that's what you do. That's the enjoyment of the ride. You did a fabulous job, and you took a bunch of other rides, and so did the photographer do a good job taking photos. But
all right.
It was great, Corey. It was great. You did. I love the story that you told on it. Thank you, and that means a lot to me. And it's congratulations to Talkback Radio, your show with your team there, and it's been a great week. Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, thanks a lot, Rich Rodriguez, a man more comfortable on a roller coaster than off it.
Oh man, Coney Island. That's the place when you're going to do it to get recognition. It's Coney Island. You have to go. The hot dogs, the roller coaster.
Yeah,
you couldn't
there's a lot of parallels between these two. The hot dog
the same thing of the carnival barker. Like when you even go there now, they have the guy come on in, see the bearded lady, and all that other stuff. I mean, it's more schlock now than it would have been back then.
Right.